because sometimes, because of the Zionist conflict, and I hope you heard what I said, the Zionist conflict. Did I say Jewish conflict?
No.
The Zionist conflict in the Palestinian world, the Israeli-Palestinian world. We often hear Muslims say disparaging things about Jews. And this is contrary to the Quran, folks. It's absolutely contrary to the guidance of Allah. Because we don't have a Jewish problem because the Jews are people of the book. We have a problem with Zionists. Encouraging the children of Israel to embrace Islam. This is what this verse is about. Allah commanded the children of Israel to embrace Islam and to follow Muhammad. He also reminded them with the example of their father Israel, Allah's prophet Yaqub, as if saying, O children of the pious, righteous servant of Allah, who obeyed Allah, be like your father, following the truth, the haqq. Thank you, Habibati. So, the only truth, folks, is whatever was revealed by Allah. We know that that truth has been changed some in previous books. But we know that we still have that truth, preserved over 1400 years. O children of the pious, righteous servants of Allah who obeyed Allah, be like your father, following the truth. This statement is similar to one saying, O you son of that generous man, do this or that. Or O son of the brave man, engage the strong fighters. Or O son of the scholars, seek the knowledge, and so forth. Similarly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in Surah 17 and verse 3, O offspring of those whom we carried in the ship with Noah, verily he was a grateful servant. What is the lesson in this verse? The lesson is to stay with the true guidance. And then there's an example of Noah alayhi salam. Noah alayhi salam, I believe, lived to be 950 years, according to most scholars. And 950 years, only 82 people listened to him. We get frustrated when we live 70 and our 3 or 4 children don't listen to us. Here was a man that obeyed Allah. It is said by scholars, Allahu Alam, Allah knows best, that at the time when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told him that it's going to be rain, that it had never rained there. Now, I don't know for sure if that's true, but I've read this in many scholarly articles. Can you imagine the faith and the trust in Allah that a man that had never seen rain would build this huge ark that 2 of every single species would go into? That he would stand to his family and say, I will obey Allah. Surah Al-Baqarah begins by speaking of the Holy Quran itself, a book wherein there is no doubt, no rave. For those who do what? Fear and believe in Allah. For those who trust Allah. For those who have hope in Allah. Those who are on true guidance. The Quran provides guidance to all mankind. The true Muslim will derive a full benefit from it. The surah proceeds in verse 10 to warn the disbelievers against the grievous punishment which awaits them in the other world, and to delineate the misdeeds of the 2 kinds of disbelievers, those who deny openly and the hypocrites. Remember, we studied these and they were defined. Then addressing all 3 groups in verses 11 through 14. This is a little bit of a review. It urges upon them to worship Allah alone. In verse 21, it presents the Holy Quran as a miracle which cannot be imitated by man, and invites him to have faith in it, to have trust in it. And remember, we talked about that's what Iman is about, having faith in what you can't prove. That's why we have faith. Next, the surah recounts how Adam was created to be the vicegerent in verse 30. A demonstration of Allah's omnipotence and wisdom, so that mankind would realize why they must obey and worship Allah. You see, folks, if we do not have faith, hope, and trust, we cannot be good vicegerents. Who will believe in you if you do not believe in what you believe in? How can I be a leader? How can I be a caliph? How can I be a vicegerent if I don't even believe in the word myself? My constitution is the Holy Quran. And if I don't live according to it, what kind of da'i or da'iyah can I be? If I say, well, this is the criterion for all mankind, but then how can I sell it? Because I don't even believe it myself. Does that make sense? May Allah help us. Next to surah, I did that. A demonstration, I did that as well. So they must obey and worship Allah alone and never be disobedient to Him. So I want you to look at the underlying things again. We obey and worship Allah alone and never be disobedient. When we are never disobedient, we will always have faith, hope, and trust. In the days of the Holy Prophet, there were two kinds of people among the disbelievers and the hypocrites. There were the mushrikun, idolaters, and associators who did not possess any religious knowledge, were mostly illiterate, and followed the customs of their forefathers. For example, the inhabitants of Mecca, in general, whom the Holy Quran called the Ummiyun, the illiterate. On the other hand, there were those who believed in the earlier prophets, had a knowledge of the earlier divine books like the Torah and the Bible, the Injil, or in both, and were known as being educated. And I want to point out something here because I think it's powerful. The greatest education that you can have in this world, and you may be surprised to hear this from a man that has 2 masters and a graduate certificate in another area. The greatest education that you can have in this world is a knowledge of Quran. That is the greatest education you can have. Is a knowledge of divine revelation, and then to have the faith to follow that, and to obey that, and to trust that. That is a successful life. This is not a successful life. Some of them were followers of Musa, but did not believe that Isa was a prophet. Today, those monotheistic Jews that Allah called and gave them His favor deny the very existence of Jesus. They say that Jesus has not come yet. And Jesus was mentioned in their book. Others were the followers of Jesus, but did not believe that Musa was Nasara, a Christian. Just like today, people don't believe that Isa, or that Musa, or that Noah were the followers of Islam. Because you see, all of the prophets were on that guidance from Allah. That submission to God. That means, in the classical sense of the word Muslim, the doers of peace. They were in obedience to God. The Jews predominated in Medina and its environs. After dealing with the idolaters and the associators, think about it, folks, there were 360 idols surrounding the Kaaba.
Yeah.
After dealing with the idolaters and the associators, the Quran addresses in verse 40 through 123 the people of the book. And we'll slowly begin to be looking at this, inshallah. With a persuasive and friendly tone, the surah refers to the noble family in which they belong and the honor which they receive from the people on account of such an affliction. Then, recounting the blessing which Allah has been showering on them, it asks them to be aware of their many misdeeds and their sins, and invites them to come to the straight path. In verse 39 to 42, invites them to Islam. Verse 43 to 45 invites them to do good deeds. So you see, folks, when we come to Islam, we have to not only come to Islam, but we have to commit what?
Good deeds.
Good deeds. Good deeds. Part of our character, part of our life, is to be looking for a way to fulfill a good deed. You know, one of the things that I love and admire about my wife is she often says, I'm looking for some good deeds. I'll hear her talking to the phone and she'll say, well, I'm just looking for some good deeds. I'll be glad to do that for you, or can I do this for your sister? Or she looks for good deeds, mashallah.
Oh, I've got a whole lot of appointments now. Take your number.
And look at this beautiful following in verse 42 to 46. And do not mix, and do not cover the truth with falsehoods, or conceal the truth while you know it. You see, when you have a divine revelation, Allah has given you a divine revelation, and you change the meaning of the words, or you insert fables, or you insert stories, or you take a diary that somebody wrote and you call it the Word of God. He warned them. He said, and do not mix, do not cover the truth with falsehood, or conceal the truth while you know it. And establish, be steadfast in prayer, and give regular zakat, and bow down your heads with those who bow in worship and obedience.
Where is the box?
It's coming around, inshallah. Do you order righteousness, right conduct on the people, and forget to practice it yourselves while you study and recite the scriptures? Then will you not reason, understand, and seek Allah's help through patient perseverance and prayer? And indeed it is difficult except for the humbly submissive to Allah and bring a lowly spirit. I could probably spend the rest of the day on this slide right here. So let's break it down a little bit. It's so powerful. It's just so packed. It's a consolidated verse. What are we doing when we say, I know the Quran says this, but?
We're doubting the Quran.
Are we not mixing truth with falsehood? Are we not concealing the truth when we do that?
We're justifying.
And then establishing prayer means do what? To establish something means what?
To build.
To do it consistently.
To do it consistently. To do it consistently, does that mean to make them up or to pray 5 separate times a day? Pray 5 separate times a day. And when we don't do that, are we mixing truth with falsehood?
Yes.
Give regular zakat. Bow down your head with those who bow in worship and obedience. We're encouraged here to pray with other people that bow down. And looking at this, pray with those people that submit. Pray with those people that are doing good deeds. Pray with those people that are not mixing truth with falsehood. And then we are asked a question. Because if we're not already doing this stuff up here in verse 42 or 43, I think it's verse 42 and 43, that's right. Then it says, do you order righteous conduct on your children or on your spouses when meanwhile you don't pray? And meanwhile you lie and people call you and you say, oh no, they're not home right now. Or you say, oh inshallah I'll be there, but you don't show up. Maybe I'm just stepping on toes a little too much this morning. But you see, inshallah doesn't mean if the Spirit strikes me. It means that in the will of Allah I have an intention to be there. That's what it means. But today, inshallah has become a phrase that has no meaning. People say inshallah like people say, where's the water fountain? Perhaps they need the water because they are in this element, because they've said inshallah and haven't been obedient to inshallah. So do you order people right conduct and forget to practice it yourself? You tell your children, astaghfirullah, you lied. you stole, but then you steal. You go to a restaurant and you say, I'd like a water cup, please. And then you go to the fountain and you get a fountain drink. And I know that the element of intelligence in my community is superior to that. Folks, this is serious stuff. And we have to look at how it comes down to the real life. Because that is nothing more than stealing. And if you don't think it is, you're mixing truth with falsehood.
That's true.
If you want a drink, buy the drink. Demonstrate what Islam teaches. People will justify it and say, well, that drink doesn't cost that restaurateur but 10 cents. Yeah, they mix truth with falsehood. Yeah, and that restaurateur counts on making that money so he can keep his business open. And then if you put the shoe on the other foot and you were the restaurateur, would you like people to take your water cup and fill it up with the drink that you paid 10 cents and hope you were going to make $1 on? Maybe even $2. We mix truth with falsehood. And then we worry while we're filled with doubt, fear, and worry. Because you know, the whole time you're sitting there drinking that drink, you think, oh my God, sure they don't walk by see me. Sure they don't recognize that brown Coke hitting water. So do you order righteousness? Yes.
I'm drinking water all the
Yes,
time. Like a fish.
But that's why you use Sprite.
Would be drink water like a fish.
Do you order righteousness, right conduct on the people that forget to practice it yourself? While you study and recite the scriptures. We used to call this, in my day of preaching, Bible thumpers. Everything you said, they had a verse. Well, we have those hadith and Quran thumpers too. They always throwing out the verse to somebody else. But watch them when they go to that restaurant. And some of them, they may not even have Coke. They may have a glass of wine. Let's keep it for rizzle for snizzle. Let's don't lie. Let's don't mix truth with falsehood. And seek Allah's help through patient perseverance and prayer. And indeed, it is difficult except for the humbly submissive. You see, folks, if you want to know why is it so difficult to do all these things that Allah said to do, why is it so hard? Because we're not humble. Because we're not submissive. Because we don't have a lowly spirit. We think too highly of ourselves. You see, we think that we're entitled. We think that we deserve to steal that drink. We think we deserve to show that proprietor what we think is just instead of what the Quran says. So we steal a drink. Verse 46, who are certain that they will meet their Lord. The people that don't mix truth with falsehood, the people that do righteous deeds, the people that obey Allah, the people that live according to what they're teaching, are certain that they will meet their Lord and that they will return to Him. O children of Israel, remember my favor that I have bestowed upon you, and that I preferred you over the worlds. You see, Allah called us to the exalted standard first. There is no greater blessing than being called to submission to God. To be called to the final revelation. It's like the 500. It's better than the 500 Club. I'm just trying to give you something to compare it to. It's greater than a blue chip stock. It's the haq. It's the truth. And we've been called to that. Israel is Prophet Yaqub or Jacob. Israel is a Hebrew word signifying the servant of Allah. It is also the second name of Yaqub or Jacob. Certain scholars say he is the only prophet with two names. The Holy Quran addresses the Jews here not as the children of Yaqub, but as the children of Israel, so that the title might remind them that they are the children of the servant of Allah. And hence they should follow the example of their father in worshiping Allah alone and obeying Him. Do you notice that along with the word worship is the word obedience? And there's no word but there. There's no, I know that that's what my father said, and I know that's what the Quran said, but I'm not going to do that. There's no rebellion there. There's a lowly spirit, a spirit of submission. a spirit of humility. It's sad, but many people believe that to be humble means that you're a doormat. That's not what it means. To be humble before Allah means to accept what Allah says and be obedient to what Allah says. That's humility. In verse 40, Allah asked the Israelites to fulfill His covenant. That is to say, the one they had made with Allah. According to Qatada and Mujahid, Surah 5:12 refers to this covenant of mercy and forgiveness, which had been mentioned in the Torah as well as in Exodus chapter 20 and chapter 34, verses 8 and 9 of Exodus. In Surah 5:12, and Allah had already had made a covenant with the children of Israel, and we raised from among them 12 leaders, 12 chiefs, it sometimes says. And Allah said, I am with you. If you establish prayer and give zakat and believe in my messengers, does that mean you leave any of them out? Was Isa one of those messengers he was talking about? Was Muhammad one of those messengers that was mentioned in the Bible and the Torah? Believe in my messengers and support them and loan Allah a goodly loan. I will surely remove from you your misdeeds and admit you to gardens beneath which rivers flow. But whoever of you disbelieves after that has certainly strayed from the soundness of the way. You see, folks, Allah promises that if you obey His guidance, His hudan, that you will be admitted into gardens. Was this talking to Jews?
Yes.
Can we hate those people that will be admitted into the gardens? No. I've been asked to read it again. Allah has already made a covenant with the children of Israel. And we raised from among them 12 leaders. And Allah said, I am with you. If you establish prayer and give zakat and believe in my messengers and support them and loan Allah a goodly loan, I will surely remove from you your misdeeds and admit you to gardens beneath which rivers flow. But whoever of you disbelieves, doubts, fears, and worries that this is not the truth, after that has certainly strayed from the soundness of the way. You see, this way, folks, and the way of God, the way of Isa alayhi salam, the way of Musa alayhi salam, the way of Noah alayhi salam, was a way of soundness. Was a way where you had peace and tranquility in your heart, that you walked through life relaxed, at ease. This is the way. The covenant mentions acts like prayer and alms, but the most important clause is having faith in all the messengers of Allah, including the Holy Prophet. According to the blessed companion Ibn Abbas, the covenant here signifies having faith in and obeying the Holy Prophet. As for Allah fulfilling their covenant, the verse we just read in Surah 5 and verse 12 makes it very clear. Allah will forgive the sins of those who fulfill the terms of the covenant and will admit them into paradise. Verse 41 makes it quite explicit that according to the covenant, it is obligatory for the Israelites to have faith in the Holy Quran. After all, it was sent to confirm the essential teachings of the Torah. The Israelite scholars were perhaps afraid that if they encouraged this covenant and essential teaching, they would go against public sentiment, lose both adherents and income. And we have this problem in the world today. We have religious institutions that are worried about losing income. And they treat it like a business instead of faith, hope, and trust. They're scared to do anything with another community out of doubt, fear, and worry that it might affect them. These three verses exhort them to speak the truth without fear. Allah alone is worthy to be feared. Hadith confirms Israel is Prophet Yaqub. Abu Dawood, At-Tayalisi, recorded that Abdullah ibn Abbas said, a group of Jews came to the Prophet and he said to them, do you know that Israel is Jacob? They said, yes, by Allah. He said, oh Allah, be witness. At-Tabari recorded that Abdullah ibn Abbas said that Israel means the servant of Allah. Can we say that the servant of Allah are people that we hate? No. Al-Qurtubi remarks in his commentary that Allah, in asking the Israelites to worship and obey Him, reminded them of the bounties and blessings He has showered on them. But in the case of the followers of the Holy Prophet, He asked them to do so without mentioning His bounties. Remember me in Surah 2 and verse 152, and I will remember you. You see, when we're not being obedient, we're not remembering Allah. When we're not giving zakat, we're not remembering Allah. When we are throwing out verses but we aren't living them, we aren't remembering Allah. We're just showing off what we know. And it's not important what you know, people. It's what you do. This is a self-suggestion which brings out the superiority of this ummah over the others. The Islamic ummah has a direct relationship with Allah. We don't have any intercessors. We have a 1-800 number right straight to Allah. We just say, oh Allah, oh Ra, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim. We call on Allah by any of His names directly. Just go right straight. For it begins by recognizing the benefactor, the one creator, and through this knowledge recognizes His bounties. Other peoples, on the contrary, begin by recognizing the bounties and proceed through His knowledge of the beneficent. Verse 40 instructs us to the obligatory nature of fulfilling agreements one has entered into and the prohibition of breaking one's promise. If you tell your children you're going to treat them, you're going to take them to Twisty Treat. And then you say, well, they won't remember. It's okay. And you don't take them. And then one day when you want to have a conversation with them about honesty, about fulfilling their oaths, they say, well, you don't. Why do you teach me the word, but you don't practice it?
Mm-hmm.
Surah 5:1, fulfill your agreements. You know, it's very sad that in the Muslim world, people hire Muslims. Muslims hire Muslims. And the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, I believe, I deem by Allah, if I remember correctly, that you should pay the one who works for you before the sweat gets off their brow. But we'll say to the brother as soon as he's finished, or the sister, oh, can't you cut me a little break? Can't you give me a discount? Oh, we brothers, alhamdulillah. All of a sudden, you're brothers at the end of the deal when it's payday. But meanwhile, they're trying to slice everything they can do out of the verbal contract that you have with them. And keep your agreements. Fulfill your agreements. According to hadith reported by Muslims, those who break their promises would, before being finally punished in the other world, be humiliated before the whole human race when it assembles together on the day of judgment. For a flag will be placed as a stigma beside everyone who has committed this sin. And the bigger the crime, the higher the flag will be. Imagine that, folks. That's something for you to look forward to. All of us are going to have our own flag. And the more lies you told, the higher your flag will be. And everybody will see it. So you see, it's real easy in this life. We can say, MashaAllah, Alhamdulillah. Oh, I love you for the sake of Allah. All that wonderful stuff. But on that day, we're going to see the truth and the ones who are false. It's not going to be a pretty flag day. Verse 41 asks the Israelites not to be the first to deny the Holy Quran. Don't be the first to deny this holy book. I found favor on you. You were the first of a group that I called back after an era of idolatry. After centuries away from Islam, Adam taught The Jews were given a book calling people back to monotheism. This verse suggests that the man who is first to deny and disbelieve will not only incur the sins of his own, but also bear the additional burden of the sins of misleading all those who follow his example and undergo a multiple punishment. This is such a huge responsibility, folks. And this is why when we teach, we must make sure that when we say something, we have the proofs. Because on the day of judgment, anything that I've taught you wrong, whenever you sin by doing what I've taught you wrong, I will carry your sin and my sin. And for that, I need all of you to pray for me. And hopefully you'll stick up and say he had a good intention on that day. That he tried to show us. And that's why I always tell you I'm like a kindergarten teacher. Because I am afraid of that. Because when people brag about you, you can soon lose your lowly spirit. You can go away from humility. This verse one who is responsible in any way for others failing or falling into any kind of sin will have to bear the burden of this sin along with the perpetrator. Similarly, one who in some way helps others to do a good deed will receive a good deed along with the perpetrator. You see, folks, this is why we need to be doing a good deed. Because we can get the good deed along with the good deed, or we can choose to get the bad deed along with the bad deed. What would you rather have?
Good deed with the good deed.
But somehow we become arrogant. And we say, hey, I ain't responsible for them. It's none of my business what they do. How many people have heard that before? It's your business. Because it's your business to get good deeds. It's your business to be obedient. Verse 41 warns the Israelites against taking a paltry price for divine revelation, his signs, ayats, proofs, verses, etc. It is prohibited to misinterpret or conceal Allah's scriptures in order to get money from people, please them, or serve their worldly interests. All of us in this room know if we've ever got caught up in that. I'll never forget when I was in California, the company I was running had been sold. We were doing very well, and I was out of job for a while. Someone came to me and said, we'd like to rehire you. And I said to them, the only way I'll come back to work for you is if I have a room to pray in. You provide me a place to pray and I'll come to work for you. And they did. But I was young in Islam then, and my iman was weak. When I asked them, I was afraid. I remember being afraid, thinking, oh my God, my trust is in you because I have a family to feed. And if they say no, how will I feed my family? This verse is often taken out of context and used to say people cannot charge for teaching the Quran. I wanted to teach this because this is a verse that's often used out of context. This verse is really not addressing that issue. Imams Malik, Al-Shafi'i, and Hanbal consider it permissible to charge for teaching. Fiqh of minorities is important in this issue. Formerly, in an Islamic state, teachers of Quran received a stipend from the Bayt al-Mal. Even Imam Hanafi jurists now accept the permissibility of remuneration for teaching the Quran. Folks, in this era that we live in, if people cannot get paid, then we will not have people that are knowledgeable. Can you see the importance of this? So we have these people that run around and they criticize those people who charge a small amount of money to teach people Quran. It is essential to transmit the word of Allah from generation to generation. This is why imams, muezzins, teachers of ahadith and fiqh are now paid. This is for teaching, not recitation. So I want to make sure I clarify this. We don't go and pay money because somebody has a beautiful voice that Allah gave them. but we pay money to learn. My master's in Islamic studies was paid for, was not given to me. We pay for knowledge, and we pay to get knowledge. And there's no greater investment than getting Islamic knowledge. In verse 40, remember my favor which I bestowed upon you. Mujahid commented, Allah's favor that He granted the Jews is that He made water gush from stones, sent down manna and quails for them, and saved them from being enslaved by Pharaoh. Abu al-Aliyah also said Allah's favor mentioned here is His sending prophets and messengers among them and revealing books to them. Ibn Kathir says that this ayah is similar to what Musa said to the children of Israel. So there are other ways to see, mashallah, the gifts that Allah gave to the children of Israel, and then to hear the children of Allah, the Muslim children, speak disparagingly about people that Allah found favor on. We have to look at our hearts. In Surah 5:20, O my people, remember the favor of Allah to you when He made prophets among you, made you kings, and gave you what He had not given to any other among the nations of their time. Muhammad bin Ishaq said that Ibn Abbas said, remember my favor which I bestowed upon you means my support for you and your fathers. That is saving them from Pharaoh and his people. So these are other meanings that scholars have given in these verses. I deem by Allah it is all the above. How can misled Muslims hate a people Allah found so much favor in? Allah help us. Reminding the children of Israel of Allah's covenant with them in verse 40, and fulfill your obligations to my covenant with you so that I fulfill my obligations to your covenant with me. How many of us, and I don't want you to answer, are fulfilling our covenant to Allah?